Welcome to Build Your Legacy, the CRE Playbook podcast, where we break down real deals, real strategies, real opportunities, along with education in commercial real estate. We are your hosts, Alex and Sarah, with Beta Commercial Group and KW Commercial, and this show is designed for investors, developers, business owners, and agents who want to build long-term wealth through commercial real estate. Let's get into today's play.
Yeah, let's jump right in because today's play is, it's a massive one. We're doing a deep dive into the personal guarantee, specifically looking at Florida commercial leases.
Right, the dreaded PG.
Exactly. And our mission for this analysis is really to, pull back the curtain on this clause. Because signing a lease with a full personal guarantee, it literally exposes your personal assets, your savings, your investments, potentially your home.
Love it. Just gone if the business can't pay rent.
Yeah, if the business goes under, they come for what you've built outside of it.
And it's wild because, there's this huge misconception out there. I talk to tenants and business owners all the time, and they just assume the PG is completely non-negotiable.
Well, standard boilerplate, right?
Right. They think, landlords in Florida just won't lease to you without it. Box checked, move on.
And landlords love that you think that. It's highly advantageous for them. But look, from a commercial leasing perspective, landlords demand that guarantee for basically one reason, and that's risk mitigation.
It's all about the risk.
Always. Everything in commercial real estate revolves around underwriting risk. And once you understand what the landlord actually needs to satisfy that underwriting, almost everything becomes negotiable.
Which perfectly sets up the core philosophy of today's deep dive. We're actually working off this masterclass framework that Jack Baytol put together specifically for this discussion.
Yeah, Jack is the director and lead agent at the Beta Commercial Group, and his approach here is just spot on.
It really flips the whole script, right? Because Jack's core rule is that you never ever just sit down at the table and say, hey, we don't want a guarantee.
Oh, yeah, don't do that. That's a fast track to getting laughed out of the room. If you just ask to eliminate it, you're guaranteeing immediate pushback.
Right, because you're just taking away their security blanket.
Exactly. So Jack Baytol's philosophy is all about replacing the risk, not just removing it. You have to reallocate that risk in a way that their underwriters and their lenders can still approve.
Give them what they actually want, which is predictability and recourse. But let me push back on that for a second. Do Florida landlords actually buy into this? Or is it just clever phrasing that falls apart in a real boardroom?
No, they absolutely buy it. Because, look, landlords aren't emotionally attached to the guarantee itself.
They don't just want your house for fun.
Right. They're attached to reducing risk. They have their own lenders breathing down their necks. If you take away their security without replacing it, their math fails. But if you replace it, they don't care what form the security takes as long as it works.
It makes sense. It's like walking into a bank, asking for a mortgage, but refusing to put the house up as collateral.
Yeah, they're going to say no.
Of course they are. Unless you offer them a different form of collateral, they're not giving you the money.
Which brings us to the actual strategies. Jack's playbook gives us these actionable letter of intent or LOI structures, and the best place to start is with time and exit-based options.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics. The first one we use a lot is the burn-off guarantee, right? Or the step-down.
Yeah, the burn-off is probably the most widely accepted structure, and that's because it directly mirrors the landlord's risk over time. Basically, the personal guarantee systematically reduces as you prove you're a good tenant.
So how does that look on paper?
Well, your LOI might say the guarantee is fully in place for year one, so 100% liability. But then in year two, it steps down to 50%. And by year three, assuming you haven't missed any payments, it drops to zero. Or sometimes it's just a full guarantee for 24 months and then it's totally gone.
Because the highest risk for the landlord is always right at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
They just paid broker commissions. Maybe they funded huge tenant improvements.
Exactly. They have massive upfront capital outlays. But once you've paid rent on time for 2 years, you've essentially proven your business model works in that location. The risk goes down, so your PG should go down too.
Makes total sense. And there's a variation of this, right? The performance-based elimination.
Yeah, that's a really strong hybrid option. Instead of a step down, the PG completely terminates after you hit a specific benchmark.
Like what, just paying rent?
Paying rent perfectly. Usually it's 12 to 24 consecutive months of clean, on-time payments. No defaults whatsoever. It creates this huge incentive for the tenant to prioritize rent above all else.
Because if they just execute perfectly for those 2 years, they literally buy their personal financial freedom.
Exactly. And the landlord gets that rock-solid cash flow to show their lender. Now, there's another one Jack's team uses heavily for office and retail, and we're seeing it a lot more in Florida industrial spaces too, which is the good guy guarantee.
Oh, I love the good guy guarantee. It sounds so friendly, but it's actually super strategic.
It really is. It doesn't change the dollar amount of your liability, but it redefines the timeline. Basically, you're only liable until you properly vacate and surrender possession of the space.
It's literally like returning a rental car.
How so?
Well, think about it. If you rent a car and realize you can't afford the weekly rate anymore, you don't just abandon it on the side of I-4.
Right, that would be a disaster.
Yeah, you drive it back to the lot, you return it clean, you hand the keys to the guy. And if you do that, you're off the hook for any future payments. You just pay for what you used. But if you ditch it on the highway and ghost them, they're coming after you for the whole value of the car.
That is a perfect analogy. Because a landlord's biggest nightmare isn't just a tenant who goes out of business.
Right, businesses fail all the time.
Exactly. The real nightmare is a tenant who fails but refuses to leave the space. That forces the landlord into this long, messy eviction process in the Florida courts. The space sits empty, makes zero money, and they can't lease it to anyone else.
So the good guy guarantee basically says, hey, if I fail, I'll hand the space back clean so you can re-lease it, and in exchange, you don't sue me for the remaining 5 years of rent.
Exactly. It prevents a messy divorce. But what if the landlord's lender is super strict? Like, they absolutely refuse to drop the guarantee.
Yeah, corporate policy says it stays on the lease no matter what.
That's when you pivot to a springing guarantee.
Springing like it jumps out at you.
Pretty much. It's a great compromise. Basically, there's no PG required up front.
Yeah.
You run your business without your personal assets on the line. But if you default on the lease, a limited guarantee suddenly springs into effect.
Wow. So you're appeasing their lender by having a penalty on the books, but it's dormant.
Exactly. It's a massive deterrent against you defaulting, but it doesn't clutter up your personal balance sheet on day one.
That is such a smart play.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the time and exit-based structures.
Yeah.
But what if the landlord is just dug in? Like, they need hard security right now before you even get the keys.
Yeah, time isn't always enough for their underwriting. When you hit that wall, you have to shift to financial trades. You're putting your capital or your brand on the line instead.
Right, so let's talk about trading cash. The most direct alternative here is the security deposit replacement.
Yep. You trade the PG for a much larger pile of cash up front. Usually we're talking a larger security deposit of anywhere from 3 to 12 months of base rent.
12 months? I mean, let's be real for a second. If I'm opening a new restaurant in Miami or, a logistics hub in Jacksonville, locking up 12 months of cash is terrible for cash flow.
Oh, it causes immense cash flow friction. There's no denying that.
Right, because I need that operating capital. I need to buy inventory, pay my staff, run marketing.
It hurts growth, absolutely. But as an analyst, you have to look at this as a calculated trade-off. You're trading immediate liquidity for long-term personal asset protection.
Basically, losing cash today is better than the landlord foreclosing on your house tomorrow.
Exactly. An unforeseen downturn hurts a lot more if your personal home is attached to it. But there is a way to mitigate that pure cash drain.
Is this where the letter of credit comes in?
Yes. Instead of writing a massive check and draining your bank account, your bank issues a letter of credit, an LOC. It basically guarantees payment to the landlord if you default.
So I keep my cash in my business account.
Yep. You pay a small fee to the bank for the LOC, but your actual cash keeps working for your business. The landlord gets their hard security, and you don't paralyze your daily operations.
And you can even tie the deposit or LOC reduction to performance, right? Like, start with 6 months, and after 2 years of good payments, it drops to 3 months.
Oh, absolutely. That's an advanced play, but it works beautifully. Now, if you don't want to use cash or an LOC, you can trade on your balance sheet with a financial covenant guarantee.
Okay, so waiving the PG based on financial health metrics.
Right. You waive the PG entirely, but the tenant has to maintain a minimum net worth and liquidity ratio, and you have to prove it every year with financial statements.
So this definitely isn't for the first-time startup.
No, not at all. Landlords want established operators for this.
Right. Like if someone has 5 successful medical clinics across Central Florida, they can just leverage that combined corporate balance sheet. They don't need to drag the owner's personal house into the deal because the corporate entity is strong enough.
Exactly. And a very similar strategy is the franchise or brand-based waiver.
Oh, sure. So if you're backed by a huge national fast food brand, you're obviously a low-risk operator.
Yeah, the corporate backing is all the security the lender needs. The corporate parent is basically the guarantor, so the local operator doesn't need a PG.
Okay, but let's look at the reality for a lot of people listening. What if you don't have this massive balance sheet? You don't have a corporate parent, and you definitely can't afford to lock up 6 months of rent in an LOC.
It happens all the time.
Right. So if you can't eliminate the risk, you have to at least build a fence around it, right? Cap the downside.
Yes, through limited guarantees. If you can't kill a PG, you cap it. The most common way is a straight capped guarantee. It puts a hard ceiling on your worst case scenario.
So you cap the liability at a fixed dollar amount or maybe a set number of months. Say 12 months of rent maximum.
Exactly. Look at an uncapped guarantee on a 10-year lease. If your business folds in year 2, the landlord could theoretically sue you personally for the remaining 8 years of rent.
Which is just absolute financial ruin.
Total ruin. But a capped guarantee limits their pursuit to just those agreed upon 12 months.
It's exactly like an insurance deductible.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because even if the absolute worst happens, you know your maximum out-of-pocket exposure from day one. You can actually sleep at night knowing the exact dollar amount of your worst day.
Rather than staring into a bottomless pit of liability.
Yeah. And the other way to build that fence is a TI or landlord exposure-based guarantee.
Okay, TI meaning tenant improvements. So you tie the PG strictly to the landlord's actual unamortized out-of-pocket costs.
Exactly. It covers the TI and the leasing commissions they paid brokers to get you in the space.
So let me make sure I've got the math right on this. Say a Tampa landlord gives me $100,000 in a TI allowance to build out my commercial kitchen.
Okay, yeah.
They expect to recoup that $100,000 slowly over my 10-year lease through the rent. But if I default in year 3, they've only gotten back, what, maybe $30,000?
Right, so they are still out $70,000 in cold, hard cash. That $70,000 is the unamortized portion.
So under this specific guarantee, my personal liability is only that $70,000 shortfall. Exactly. You are just covering their actual sunk costs. You make sure they don't lose the cash they fronted for your build-out, but you are not guaranteeing their future expected profits for the next 7 years.
I mean, that is just an incredibly logical, math-based argument. Any reasonable landlord would entertain that because it explicitly protects their initial investment.
It really is. So we've covered how to shrink the target and cap the downside. But none of this matters if you don't know how to execute the deal in Florida.
Right, getting it into the actual legally binding paperwork. Where do these strategies even live in a standard Florida realtor's commercial agreement?
Good question. They don't just float around in the margins. You'll typically find them in a standalone guarantee exhibit attached as a rider or addendum or tucked into the additional terms section.
Yes, Section 23, right. That's usually the blank canvas in those base forms where you can insert these heavily negotiated structures.
That's the spot. But here is Jack Baytall's final advanced pro tip. Knowing where to put a burn-off guarantee in the contract is completely useless if you don't know how to position the ask in the room.
You can just demand it in a vacuum.
Exactly. What truly moves landlords is tying your request to the value you bring. You tie it to your strong financials, your business plan, the length of the lease, and the capital you're pouring into their building.
The playbook actually gives us a script for this, right?
Yeah.
You sit across from the landlord and say, tenant is investing $300,000 into the build-out and signing a 10-year lease, requesting a burn-off guarantees structure aligned with long-term commitment.
And that changes the entire temperature of the room.
Totally shifts the vibe.
Because you're saying, I'm giving you a decade-long commitment and making your property more valuable. Suddenly, asking for a modified guarantee seems like a perfectly reasonable business accommodation.
You look like a serious partner, not someone trying to dodge responsibility. Look, if you're listening to this right now and realizing your approach to commercial leasing needs an overhaul, or if page 42 of your current lease is making you sweat, you need to reach out.
You really do.
Contact an agent from our group to get an in-depth analysis on how to be successful in commercial investing, or just to find the right place for your business with the right terms. Go directly to our website, www.betacommercial.com. That is spelled B-A-T-A commercial.a.com.
Having professional representation that actually understands underwriting, risk reallocation, and Florida contract structures, I mean, that's the difference between a deal that propels you forward and one that puts your family's future in jeopardy.
It really is. And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to just mull over. Think about your current situation. How much of your personal wealth is silently, invisibly tied up in a commercial lease you signed 5 or 10 years ago.
That's a scary thought for a lot of people.
It is. But if you've been a flawless tenant all that time, you have immense leverage right now. Could you use these exact strategies we talked about today to renegotiate that clause and free up your personal leverage at your next lease renewal?
Oh, absolutely. That clause doesn't have to be permanent. With the right strategy and the right representation, it's just another point in negotiation.
If you found value in today's episode, make sure to subscribe and share it with someone who's serious about growing in commercial real estate. If you're looking to buy, sell, lease, or invest, or if you're a developer searching for your next opportunity, reach out directly. And if you're an agent ready to build your commercial business, let's connect. Until next time, go build your legacy.